Hey, this is Joseph from NajoniPhoto.com, and in today's video I'm going to tell you how to do some pretty advanced selections and compositing and layer masking in Photoshop. So here we are in Lightroom. I have these two photos that I took here in Sedona, Arizona. This first one's really cool, but the second one's really special because I just love the star spirals here in this light that I caught behind these trees. So I want to take the sky from this photo and put it in the sky on this photo. Okay, so to do that, we need to do what's known as layer masking in Photoshop. So in order to do that, we're going to select these images and we're going to right click and open as layers in Photoshop. Now we'll just give it a second here to load up. Hopefully you have Adobe CC and Photoshop CC, because it's only about $10 a month, I think, for both of the programs. At least it was when I paid for it. And it's very useful, it's very helpful, and the programs talk to each other. So you can have a photo in Lightroom and you can send it to Photoshop, and then when you're done with it in Photoshop, you can go ahead and send it back to Lightroom. So while this is loading, I'll just keep chit-chatting here. There we go. Okay, so we have our layers opened up in Photoshop here. Okay, if we click on this eye, we can make these layers disappear. Okay, and you can also move these layers however you want in Photoshop. Okay, now this video has to do with layer masking, and it's this is weird because this is kind of going to be a real fundamental explanation of layer masking, but it's also going to be a pretty advanced explanation of creating a really intense and advanced selection. So if you're not really super familiar with layer masks, you might want to go back and review them a little bit, but I'll touch up on them and try to make it make sense. My goal for this video is that I can help teach you this very advanced concept that I just learned this right now. But if you follow these instructions step by step, you're going to be able to do the same concept on your own, and it's really exciting. And I think that you're going to love it so much that it's going to get you really excited to learn more about Photoshop and to go out there and do even more photos, because you'll realize like how much more opportunity you have with your photos when you know how to do this trick. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. What we're trying to do here is we want to have this sky here show up in this sky here. So in order to do that, we need to create a layer mask. Now what a layer mask is in Photoshop is essentially if we apply a layer mask to this image that I have selected here, a layer mask will pretty much allow us to make certain parts of this image disappear so that we can see what's below it in this layer below this image. Okay? So for example, if I was to create a selection here, just a square selection, and I was to create a layer mask, whoops. If I was to create a layer mask, then you see here, this square, I'm seeing my original image, but outside of the square, I'm seeing the image that's below my top layer. Now look at this thumbnail. You see we have a white square and black around it. Well, that's because the layer system in Photoshop works under a concept known as white reveals, black conceals. Essentially, a white area in your layer mask means that you are able to see that area of your layer. But the black is concealing that area of your layer. So that's why around the square we can see below this top layer, because we are concealing the area around this. Now if I was to click on this layer and click Command, tap Command and I on my keyboard, we will inverse this layer mask. So now the tiny square is black, or is concealing the top layer, and everything around that is revealing the top layer. So that's just a real fundamental understanding of layer masks. Okay? Now, Whoops. Let me go ahead and delete this layer. There we go. So now that we know layer masks, we know that we need to create a layer mask around the sky, around this tree, okay? But the problem with that is the tree itself, because we have all of these branches here, and frankly, there are a lot of tools that you can use to create a selection. You just saw how we created a basic square selection, but there are a lot of tools that you can make detailed selections, but frankly, it would be impossible to create good selections through all of these little branches, not to mention these branches around the tree here. We wouldn't be able to do it. And if we did do it, we'd be here for hours and hours and hours. So there's a better way to create a detailed selection, and it's with a channel selection. So in order to do a channel selection, essentially what it is a channel, if we look at it, it pretty much turns our image into a black and white, where we're seeing the red, blue, and green channels. Okay? What we're trying to do with a channel selection is we're trying to make our image either black or white, meaning that I want to create a selection around this tree, right? So I want this tree in my channel selection to be really, really black or white, doesn't matter, and I'd want my sky to be really, really white. Because if I can do that, then I can easily create a selection around the black areas of my photo. And let me show you that. So right off the bat, what I can tell you is that working with your layers, you want to use the channel to the layer that's going to work, that's going to kind of help you along the way. So right off the bat, we can see this channel works a lot better because the tree is already silhouetted in this channel. So we're already 10 steps ahead of the game here by starting with this photo. So we're going to click on this thumbnail here, and we're going to open up our channel right here. Now, if you can't see the channel on your toolbar, just make sure that you have, that's not the toolbar, I'm not sure what this area is called, but in this little drop-down menu here, just make sure that you have this set to photography. So now we're going to go into these channels. There's red, green, and blue. And of these three channels, I can tell you that the blue so far looks the best because we have the best silhouette of the tree with this blue channel, okay? Now that we've got our channel selected, we want to copy it. So we're going to drag this channel down to this little icon left of the trash can, and it's going to copy our channel. We're going to click on that, and we're going to hold Command. Command is Control, I think, on a PC. Command M as in man, and it's going to bring up our tone curve. Now, I won't really go into tone curves that much. Hopefully you already understand them. But what we're going to do in our tone curve is we're going to click on this hand icon, and what this is going to allow us to select an area of our photo, and when we click and drag down, we darken it. When we drag up, we brighten it. So what we want to do is we want to brighten the dark areas around this tree, okay? Because we're not going to be able to create a selection because there's too much gray and different colors around here. So we want to make this as white as possible. So let's go ahead and click here and drag it up as far as we can go to make that as white as we can get it. Wow, right there. That looks pretty good. We'll do it here. There's still a little more gray there. That looks good. Okay. Now the tree is looking a little too gray, so we're going to click on the tree and we're going to drag this down. Good. Whoop. Don't know what we did there. Let's go ahead and drag that puppy down. Okay, that looks pretty good. Not perfect because we have a lot of these white areas in between here, but we can deal with those later. Okay? So now that we've done this, we've pretty much accentuated this channel to the point that it's in the areas where it matters the most, we have pure whites and almost pure blacks. Now we got to create the selection. It's very easy to do that. With your channel selected, all you have to do is click on this little icon here. So what does it say? It says Load Channel as Selection. Or you can hold Command and click on the thumbnail, and it's going to create the selection. Now, if we go back to our image, bada boom, there is this beautiful, tight little selection all around this tree. Really beautiful. But we have all these other little selections down here, again, because the channel picks up selections that are gray or white. So we had some unnecessary selections down here, so we want to remove these. Easiest way to do it in this situation is we'll click on our marquee tool, and we want to deselect this area. So to do that, you just click on this icon here, and what this is doing is, let's hold our mouse, subtract from the selection, right? You can also subtract from the selection by holding Option or Alt on your keyboard. And now when we drag this little bad boy over the image, bada bing, those selections are gone. Okay, now let's see. Now this is creating the selection around the tree, so we want to actually invert the selection. Let me just show you that real quick. You can inverse the selection here, and you see what it's doing now is it's creating the selection actually around the tree and the ground as opposed to the sky. Okay, so if we do that, all we have to do is select here, because we want to put the layer mask over this image, and create our layer mask, and wham! Look at that. That is pretty freaking beautiful. Just like that. You see how easy that was? Now let's zoom in. Let's take a look at this. Look at how beautiful that is. Look at what a great job it did. You can see everything behind those branches. Did a really good job here. Now, one thing I do want to mention, a couple things you can do. Now, sometimes in here you're kind of seeing it. You're kind of seeing these weird little black lines around the branches here. I guess you'd call that color fringing. In order to get rid of that, there's a couple different things you can do. One is that you can right-click on your mask, and you can click on Refine Mask, and it's going to bring up this little box here. And you can play around with all these sliders, but I want to keep this video short. Easiest thing to do is click on Smart Radius and slide this until you get to the point that it looks good. So give it a second there. Okay. Let's see how that looks. Looks pretty good, but let's take the Smart Radius off and see if it looks better without it or with it. Okay. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, so we'll keep the Smart Radius on. If my computer will catch up with me here. There we go. Cool. All right. Another thing we can do, if we do this and we're still seeing those funky little lines, whoops, there is another way to remove those lines. If you have your mask selected, go up to Filter, go down to Other, and then go down to Maximum. Don't ask me the technical explanation for how this thing works, but essentially what it does is, the way I would say it is let's say it kind of deletes some of the pixels around your edges. I don't think that's the technical way to say it. But yeah, as you can see, like the before and the after, it does kind of remove some of the, like those hard lines around the tree. But you know what? I really don't care about it in this image. I'm going to leave it alone. But just keep in mind, like this is something you can do. You can work with the maximum tool. And then we'll see here, like the more pixels you add to this, it's pretty much going to like delete this tree here. Give it a second. It doesn't make me look like an idiot. I'm not sure why it's not doing that. Yeah, who knows? All right, but that's just one option. Just keep that in mind. If you ever notice color fringing around your edges and you can't get rid of it with the Refine Mask, remember this tool. If you go into this tool and you play around with it, you're good. Oh, wait, maybe that's why. Yeah, there we go. That's why we weren't seeing it, because it wasn't turned on. But you see, it just like trashes the image. So really, you're working with maybe one, two, maybe 3 pixels at the most. But I'm going to go ahead and cancel this because I don't know, I like the way it looks as it is now. Okay, so right there, we're doing pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. Copyright. Curb Your Enthusiasm. All right. So, a couple more problems, issues with this photo. Okay, one, we have a little bit of this blown out light here. I think a car went by or something, but it blew out the trees. So, given that it doesn't exist in the image in the layer below my top layer, I can go ahead and blend that out quite easily. If I click on my layer, I go to the brush tool. Now I want to make sure that I'm on black so that I'm concealing, and we can just go ahead and brush that little guy away. And there he goes. I also think that the light here is a little bit distracting. I think the image works a little bit better as a deep black here, so I'm just going to go ahead and brush this area away as well. And boom, sayonara, sucker. All right. One more thing that I want to do. This tree, it looks fantastic. But, well, let me go ahead and plug my battery in. Sorry about that. All right. There we go. Okay, this tree, it looks pretty great. But the problem is I went a little too overboard on the flashlight, and it's a little bit overly bright. I want to darken this down and make it look a little closer to the exposure in the rest of this image. So how would I do that? Well, I could use my burn tool and I could go ahead and burn this tree. But the problem is that I don't want to burn anything around the tree. I want to leave it alone. So we got to create another selection around this tree. Now you might be thinking, oh crap, we got to go back and do all the channeling again. No, we don't. Since we've already created the selection, we're already halfway there. We're actually about 3/4 of the way there because we already created the selection. If we hold Command and we tap on this layer mask, boom, it brings up our selection right there. Now, all we need to do is deselect the areas around the tree that we don't want. So let's bring up our marquee tool. Again, we have our subtract clicked. We're gonna, for me, I'm gonna turn that off. I'm gonna hold the Option key, and we're gonna deselect this area. We're gonna deselect this area, just like that. And now that we're getting down to this area, we're gonna go to our Quick Select tool. We'll make sure that the negative is selected. And we're just going to kind of deselect the area around this tree. Okay. Give that a little time. My computer's a little slow here, right around there. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Done with one side. Okay. Kind of did a little sloppy area around this edge here. But we're not going to worry about that. We want to keep this video a little shorter. Okay, so now we have the selection around the tree. Since we've already gone through the trouble of creating this selection, we're going to go ahead and we're going to save a selection. Now we can save any selection. I think I've saved this a couple times before. No, I haven't. Okay, so we're going to call this tree. Exclamation point. So now if I was to deselect this, and I could go back and I could reselect it just like that. Let me make sure that it's still there. Lightroom has had Photoshop's had a tendency to delete these on me. I'm not sure why. But yeah, there we go. So if we're creating selections, well, let me go ahead and undo that. There we go. So if we're creating these complicated selections, we can save them so that we don't have to go through the trouble again. All right, now that we've done that, we are going to blend these layers down, merge them together, right like that. Okay, now zoom out here just a little bit. Okay, now we want to use our burn tool. I'm going to go ahead and create a save state. This is saving everything that I've done up to this point. All right. Okay, now back on track here. So now we have our burn tool selected, okay? Let's go ahead and put it to 100. Now, in theory, see when I hover over the tree, it darkens the tree, but it darkens nothing around the tree. Pretty freaking cool, all right? Just like that. Well, that's way too far. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to go back to our snapshot. Okay, now, another little helpful tip is that now that I have my selection created and I want to darken this tree down, these little marching ants are actually pretty annoying. They're kind of in the way. I want to make those disappear. So I'm going to hit Command and H, and that's going to make those disappear. Now in my Photoshop, I had an issue where that hotkey was disabled. So in order to, let me just show you this real quick. If that hotkey doesn't work, you got to go into File, Keyboard Shortcuts, and then I think it's View, and then Show, right? Show, and then right there, Selection Edges, Command H. Again, for me, when for whatever reason, this hotkey was disabled in my Photoshop. So I had to go in here and re-establish this hotkey. So if that hotkey doesn't work for you, go do that because this is really freaking helpful to have this hotkey. Okay, so now this selection is hidden, but it's still active. You see, like I can still do that over the tree, okay? I can still burn it down. I don't want to use 100% exposure. That's way too high. We want to use way more of a subtle touch, maybe down to about 5%. That's good. And then we want to work, we have an option, we can work with the shadows, midtones, or highlights. I'll work with the midtones. And now we can just kind of gently paint over this tree, just like that. Oh yeah, really cool. All right, that is the before and the after. Really nice. Maybe a little too dark for my taste, but hey, this is just a teaching educational video. So there you have it. If we go ahead and hit Command Save, I'm not going to do that right now, but Command Save will save this image and it will spit it back into Lightroom right here. This is an image that I worked on in my own time. One thing I will say, with this image, I actually found a really cool use for the radial tool. The computer is having kind of a hard time moving along here, but the radial tool, this is something that I don't use too often. Let me go ahead and turn this off. But as you can see, again, I caught this light down here behind this tree, and I actually used the radial tool to brighten that up and like kind of make it pop a little more. The radial tool is this little oval tool that you can create. You can slide it. You can adjust the angle of it how you like. You can make it larger, bigger. What I did was I just slid it over this natural light. You make sure to invert it. And now you can play around with the temperature, the shadow, the haze, the saturation, things like that, and that's what I used in order to brighten this area up a little more. And you can see I made this subtle little touch to the photo to make it look a little bit better. Well, that's it for now. I hope you found this video helpful. Please stay tuned for more. See ya.